I think it's in chapter 52, the first several verses, that talks about how he will not be recognizable after he's tortured.
What's interesting, almost eerie, is that Jesus was very familiar with these four servant songs and with the big picture. Thinking of Jesus reading this stuff, saying, "This is me," and he knew it was him because he was with God as they were inspiring Isaiah to write this stuff down. They gave Isaiah these images and these metaphors and these prophetic pictures. And so, and therefore it makes sense that the first time Jesus, as a grown man, going public for the first time, he quotes from Isaiah. So let's just read that and then invite further comments. So we're starting in Isaiah 52, starting in verse 13. So, "See, my servant will act wisely. He will be raised up. He will be raised and lifted up, highly exalted. Just as there were many who were appalled at him." And here we go. "His appearance was so disfigured, beyond that of any human being. His form marred beyond human likeness." It's like Isaiah apparently is somehow he gets this picture of a mangled body after the scourging and after carrying the cross as far as it can. You can see why he can't carry the cross all the way. And it's interesting to me that they keep talking about how he didn't look human, and yet at that time he certainly did not look divine.
Right.
"He will sprinkle many nations. Kings will shut their mouths because of him." Of course, I think of him before Pilate, and Pilate can't get him to talk, and then Pilate doesn't know what to say. "For what they were not told, they will see. What they have not heard, they will understand." Apparently, this is the point when they do hear and they do see, when his figure is marred beyond all recognition. 53, I'll continue to read because this passage is just so cool. "Who has believed our message? And to whom has the arm of the Lord been revealed? He grew up before him like a tender shoot, like a root out of dry ground." And here we go again. "He had no beauty or majesty to attract us to him. Nothing in his appearance that we should desire him. He was despised and rejected by mankind, a man of suffering and familiar with pain, like one from whom people hide their faces. He was despised. We held him in low esteem." And then it goes into what his suffering produces, and his suffering replaces ours. His wounds remove our transgressions.
I think we see reminders all the time of it's not who has you, it's who loves you. And, scripture talks about grafting us in. And even if you're addressing Jews, who are actually, they're in the line, they're part of the tribes, right? They came
the
to this
family.
lineage. They are the family. Everyone who was a believer, so at the time, Jewish people who were following God, their transgressions and their sins did separate them, and there had to be atonement and there had to be sacrifice, because just being part of the family wasn't enough when you did things that you shouldn't do. And Jesus is the ultimate sheep. He's the ultimate sacrifice, letting not just people who had stepped away from God before Jesus came, but everyone since then who has stepped away from God can come back in, and your sin doesn't hide you from a being that is as bright as the sun or brighter. And so you can be, he's pursuing you not to punish you. He's pursuing you to bring you back into his arms. We're all the prodigal son.
Every tongue, every tribe, every nation, past, present, and future.
And he says that throughout Isaiah. It's such a good foreshadowing of bringing Gentiles in and everything else, because Isaiah points repeatedly to every nation, every every people, every person I'm inviting into this, I'm pursuing, and I'm coming for you with a love that you're not going to be able to fully comprehend.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Yeah.
isn't it interesting that the first scripture he ever quotes in the New Testament, and as coming out, his coming out party, he quotes Isaiah, and it's interesting who he's coming for, referencing what you just said. And I'm going to read Isaiah 61, some verses now. The Spirit of the Sovereign Lord is on me, because the Lord has anointed me to proclaim good news to the poor. He has sent me to bind up the brokenhearted, to proclaim freedom for the captives and release from darkness for the prisoners, to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor, the day of vengeance of our God, to comfort all who mourn, provide for those who grieve in Zion, to bestow on them, and here's a juxtaposition, bestow on them a crown of beauty instead of ashes, of the oil of joy instead of mourning, garment of praise instead of a spirit of despair. And I love, here's how they end up. They will be called oaks of righteousness, a planting of the Lord for the display of his splendor. And of course, one of the things I love about Isaiah is how he constantly goes to tree metaphors. And so we go from imprisoned, grieving, brokenhearted, blind, imprisoned, to these a forest of oak trees to display his splendor.
You came along